Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Dara, and I'm the Director of Canadian Operations for Schulich Leader Scholarships. As the person who works with all high schools and CEGEPs across Canada to identify their top students for this award, it's an honor to be here today and meet you all and learn how you become so accomplished. With that being said, I'm pleased to introduce our second Leader Talk segment. BC, Alberta, and Quebec will be having their own local Leader Talks. First up, in Ontario, we have a 2013 UBC Schulich Leader doing combined honors in math and computer science with a minor in physics. Jake Bian will sketch some foundational issues in modern machine learning and show us how he's tackling them through both theoretical work and engineering. Deep problems like these inspire and drive him. Please welcome Jake Bian.
Thanks. Hi, people. Sorry, that sounded really scary. It's not going to be that. Yeah. So what I wanted to do was basically sketch some problems, some things I care about, and it started this set of problems that I've just become really obsessed with in the past couple of years. And at the heart of it is this idea that machine learning is geometry. And this is an amazing idea. And the reason it's amazing is on the left-hand side, you have something that's hard. I don't like it. It's complicated. On the right-hand side, there's something that's nicer. It's something that's elegant, something you can picture occasionally. So how does this work? This is going to be my example of a machine learning problem. And what I'm drawing here is this problem of give me a picture, and I'm going to try to tell you whether there is a cat in the picture. And what I mean by doing this with machine learning is that I'm going to invent some sort of procedure that looks at my data set and produces something that will tell me about inputs that it hasn't seen before. And it will do this in a way that's consistent, that sort of naturally interpolates the data. And what that translates to is that it's this sort of smooth geometry you see here on the right. So this is sort of one of the fundamental ways that sort of geometry relates to these data science type of problems. But this is difficult. I don't like this picture. So I'm going to talk about a simpler problem. I'm going to look at this sort of blue plane I've sketched here, which is some really bad representation of the space of all images. And I'm going to take this space, I'm going to compress it. I'm going to just squeeze it down to one dimension. So this is the problem I'm going to think about instead. This is a problem you can solve in Excel. This is called fitting a curve. And actually, I'm going to talk about something even simpler. Let's cut off. I'm going to talk about fitting a line to this data set. And what I'm going to claim is that sort of all the basic ideas in modern machine learning is just present in this problem. So when you tell Excel to solve this problem for you, right? What it does is it goes out and it looks at different lines. It looks at different parameters. So what I've drawn here is sort of some representation of the space of lines, which more or less precisely looks like this. And each point on this space corresponds to this line, right? And this space has a nice geometry to it. It's smooth. And whenever I have a curve on my left-hand side, this corresponds to some smooth family of lines on the right. Yeah? So this is really the heart of all optimization problems. What I'm doing is I'm looking at my space of models, and I'm finding some flow. I'm finding some smooth curve. And I'm flowing from some point onto some other point, which is sort of considered optimal for my problem. And this is the basic setup for essentially every problem that's out there. OK, so that's all I was going to say about this particular example of a line. What's missing in this example is the fact that it's pretty dumb. I mean, as you might know from your experience with Excel, a line is not the best model for anything. But it's nice, right? So what I mean by this, the fact that it's dumb, right? Because your actual function that you want to find could live anywhere in this sort of space of all functions. And the problem here is that the space I've sketched for you is like a very small portion of it. Yeah? So imagine, here's what I want to do. I want some way to take what I described to you, and I want to take two of these functions, stack it on top of each other to build like a more complicated function. And when I do that, and if I keep doing this, what I get is sort of larger and larger regions of my space of functions, right? So this is really the idea of neural networks. This is the idea that I'm going to explore my space of approximations in a controlled way, so that I can control my complexity in a sequence of things like this. All right. Turns out this doesn't quite work because linear functions will compose to other linear functions, but turns out there's a way to fix it. You just insert something nonlinear in between, and you can do this, and everything I've just told you goes through. And this is an example of a one-dimensional neural network. Right? This is an example of a less simple neural network. In the wild, it's called the Inception Model. And it's basically what I described to you, just in a more complicated arrangement with higher dimensions. So finally, I get to the problems that I want to tell you about. The problems, number one, I told you something about the geometry of these spaces. But I've told you very little about the geometry of these spaces. What we really want to know is, well, what more can tools from geometry really tell us about machine learning? And that's some of my research work in the past. And the other problem related to this is that, given a problem, given any sort of data set, really what kind of modularized spaces should I be considering in the first place? What kind of parameter spaces, what kind of models should I be looking at? And this problem is really just too hard to solve. I've given up on it completely. So I decided to tackle it computationally. And by this, I sort of built this software company to do just this. And that's all I wanted to say.